troop ship
on
the boat?
Yeah, well, after the 4th Anti-Tank Battery, we went down to Petawawa for further training, which is a big Army base, still a big Army base. And from there, in August, we got our embarkation leave, and I got home for 2 weeks, and we knew we were going overseas. Then went back to Debert, and at that time, Debert, Nova Scotia, which is not too far from Halifax. And then we waited a ship to take us overseas to England. And I just forget the name of the ship that came over and we went over on. But it took us 9 days, and we were up in the gun turrets and that every day too, in case the enemy subs or ships or that. But we had about 30 to 35 ships in our convoy. A few Army or Navy ships, destroyers and that like. They took you part way over, and then they couldn't go right across the ocean at that time. Never met the other one to take us the rest of the way. And fortunately, we never did see any enemy subs or ships.
And were you afraid? What did you do to pass the time on the boat?
Well, on the boat, we played cards a lot, gambled, ate, not a heck of a lot. Nobody was really afraid or scared of that. It was an expedition. It was something out of the ordinary. We were all living it for the first time, you know. So it was a good experience.
What was it like arriving in England, and like what other forms of training did you do once you arrived in England? And did you interact with British civilians, or other soldiers from countries?
Well, we landed, our ship landed in Liverpool, in England, and I think that's where the Beatles come from, in Liverpool. And we landed there long before they were born. But we had women, believe it or not, they're giving us apple pies and that. This isn't so bad. You know, they eat like that, apple pies and all the rest of it. So we got trained, so we all got on troop trains, as they called them in those days. Took us down to Aldershot, which is a big Army camp. And from there, they were dispatched to different parts of southern England. We stayed in southern England all the time I was in England. And we trained tank maneuvers. Used to know all the pictures of all the German tanks and our own tanks, the American tanks, because if you're going to shoot one, you better shoot the enemy.
Did you ever interact with other soldiers from different countries?
Not till we got to Italy.
Right.
It was strictly British, and it was strictly Canadian, really, in England. We used to go on out to Wales to shoot our guns for target training. So we never really interacted with any other troops except our own regiment. You know.
Okay. What was it like having to leave York action during your tour of duty?
Yeah, I saw a lot of action. I could go on for a half an hour talking about different ones, but down in Italy, the first big battle was Ortona in the southern part of Italy, and the Germans, it was more hand-to-hand and building-to-building type of fighting. And on Christmas Day in 1943, in the First World War, they declared a truce somewhat on Christmas Day, and they never fired each other, but Ortona was something different. The first Canadian team was out having their Christmas dinner, and they had to go back in the line because Germany put on an offensive on Christmas Day, so it was hectic, and we had a lot of, I'll just touch the highlights, and we were part of the 8th Army in Italy, and that was the British 8th Army, but it was mainly made up of people, countries from the Commonwealth. There was British, Canadian, New Zealand, Australian, Indian. We even had Polish troops with us, and we all melded into one unit, and we fought up the Adriatic Coast, which is on the east side of Italy, and we had to go over to Montecassino, and the American 5th Army, General Mark Clark, they had landed at Anzio off the Mediterranean, and they couldn't break out of the bridgehead, so they shipped part of the 8th Army over to that part, and we put a big offensive on up through the Hitler line and Montecassino, and at Montecassino we had all our guns lined up and to break through the line, the German lines, and there wasn't a tree left standing or anything when we got through and went through, and that we managed to break out of the Anzio and freed Rome from the Germans. And so later on, I had the privilege of going on a week's leave to Rome, which is a week's holiday, and had a great time. Although it caught the fleas, which wasn't too bad. I spent most of my week scratching, and I went to the British doctor there to see what he could do for me. And he says, you catch them everywhere in Italy. He says, I even caught them in the opera house. So I had to wait to get back to camp before I could get washed and changed, get new clothes and that, so. Had lots of action in Italy. It was a terrible country to fight in, because you were either going through the mountains or over rivers, and every step of the way had a fight on it. It was good.
What would be your what would be your impression about war?
Well, that was I fought in Italy, and I fought on the continent in Holland, and Holland was a flat country and very, very easy to get around. You could see for miles. Whereas in Italy, you had the Apennine mountains, you had rivers, you had hills, and it was. So
you found Italy more emotional in the fighting?
Emotional and definitely more severe.
Right.
To survive in that country that was in Holland.
Right.
Although a lot of people died in Holland too. I was over in Holland. I've been back 5 times, and last time I was over, I helped to unveil a memorial that they'd built right in the river, and it was maple leaves, up the copper maple leaf, and it had 43 holes in it, and the 43 holes represented the 43 Canadian soldiers that got killed in Groningen in Holland, and it was a very emotional monument to see for the first time.
Right. How does Remembrance Day make you feel?
Remembrance Day is naturally a very emotional time for all veterans. You're responding to the memories of all the soldiers left behind in France and Italy and Hong Kong and Korea, where the Canadians were involved. So Remembrance Day has a special time for Canadian soldiers. And I was young, just before Remembrance Day. I was selling poppies and down the Eaton Center, And I met people from all the different countries in the world, Russia, Yugoslavia, talking about the guys who were in the services in those countries and that, you know. And that in itself was very, very emotional to bring back the memories of wartime and going through, because we had what we called partisans. They were Yugoslavians, and I met one fellow. He was a partisan in the war in Italy. So it's a very emotional time.